Okay, I just made a short video and I recapped a couple of things. I covered the first message that God gave me after I found out my wife was pregnant with our first daughter, Faith. The God C3187, 4619, 12, and I talked about baptizing your children, which we're baptizing our children this Sunday. If your children aren't baptized, baptize them before August 12th. That's what God's got on my heart, just sharing it with you. If it's important to baptize my children, it's probably important to baptize your children too. But this video is I'm going to go into a little bit more about the 95. So I made a video last night and all of this stuff was in there. It was an hour and a half long, like that first video, and I know people don't want to watch that. So I'll try to keep this shorter. So, where to start? So, Francis Scott Key Bridge. Okay. So, the Francis Scott Key Bridge gets taken out. And that was, and I was noting this. I don't know why, but I was paying attention. This was like a third thing, like attack. And that's why I was paying attention. This was like a third attack on the I95 corridor in a very short period of time. And there was some other stuff that happened too, like a car fire that shut it down. There was a big snowstorm that shut it down for a long time, like 24 hours, 48 hours. And people almost froze to death. Maybe people did freeze to death, I don't remember. Then there was the truck that got, the tanker truck that, intentionally got set on fire. I say intentionally got set on fire underneath the bridge and destroyed the bridge integrity, and they had to shut it down and tear down that bridge. I don't know if they have it rebuilt yet. So when the Francis Scott Key Bridge went down, something came to my attention, and I started sharing that online. I said, "Hey, 2024 is 404 years from 1620. 1620 when the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. Yeah, 2024 minus 1620 is 404. And I didn't know if it was like the evil people doing a joke, or maybe it's God's cosmic joke. 404, America not found. And the reason I say that is the Francis Scott Key Bridge going down was very symbolic. And whoever did it, I believe it was done by the hand of God. And I believe it was done by the hand of God for this reason, to send a message that America won't be found, right? So Francis Scott Key was known for the Star-Spangled Banner. And, that says bombs bursting in the air, in the morning the flag was still there. Well, the Francis Scott Key Bridge going down, it does two things. It cuts off 95, but it's like a message that, hey, not this time. In the morning, you won't be found. Okay, so I'm putting this out there on the internet and on some social media that I'm on, and I guess I'll just read this to you. I'm going to try and read it really fast rather than to explain it and then read it. Just got to find it now. I should have had it all pulled up. Just bear with me, I'll find it. Okay. I'm just going to read this to you rather than explain it, because I've already typed it all out. And this was, I was decoding this decoding it, trying to understand it, and writing it up as like a social media post. So I'll just read it to you. I never did post it. Take the time to read confirmation and explanation from God. Yesterday, God spoke to me and confirmed and explained something I've been telling people on here. I started telling you when they destroyed the Francis Scott Key Bridge that it's been 404 years since the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. It says after the night of being attacked, the flag was still there. That's the message of the song, still there. But the bridge going down is saying no, it's not still there after this attack and won't be found. 2024 minus 1620 equals 404. It's a joke. Error code 404, America not found. But God set me straight on who is doing this and what won't be found. It's the United States government that won't be found. That ends this year, and I'll explain. So I'm driving west yesterday on I-40. You know, this wasn't yesterday. This was months ago, right? I was writing this up as a social media post, but never posted it. So I'm driving west yesterday on I-40, taking my daughter to an appointment in Oklahoma City. It was raining and was getting worse and worse the further we got west. I was in prayer and meditation as I drove, and my daughter was sleeping. And I was just thinking about things and pondering things God has shown me in the future. I'm going to pause this so I can upload this other video and finish in a second. Okay, that was very unfortunate. I hit stop instead of pause, so now I'm going to have to join these videos together, and that'll take an hour of compilation. All right, so we're driving west through the storm. I was just thinking about things and pondering things God has shown me in the future. As we were crossing Lake Afula, right in the middle of the lake, a car zoomed past me on the left. I glanced over and its license plate was 1620 on a dark blue background. Probably some Indian tribal plate, but nothing else. Just 1620 right in the middle. I laughed out loud. How funny. Heading west across the water in the storm in 1620. I mean, it was storming bad, and it was getting worse and worse as we drove west and going across the lake. And you know, I was in the right lane. I was going carefully, slow, like maybe 50, 55 at the most. And this car just blew past me on the left. And you know, I just looked left and boom, there it is, right there, 1620. I'm sure if any of you are skeptical, you can probably look it up and you'll figure out what tribe it is. I'm almost sure it's an Indian tribe. You know, all of eastern Oklahoma is Indian tribe territory. Anyways, I thought about this and continued to ponder it deeply, and more of the message flowed. Oklahoma City is area code 405, I thought. Right, so the 1620 indicated confirmation about the 404. 2024 minus 1620 is 404. Oklahoma City is area code 405, I thought. I wonder if we are heading into area code 404 before 405, so I looked it up. Wow, 404 is Atlanta, Georgia. That was significant to me because just like a couple days before, I had been talking with my patent attorney. A flurry of thoughts and realizations went through my head in seconds. I recently had a conversation with the patent attorney that had been assigned to me when my original became unavailable because of getting elected to office in Michigan. After we finished our work that day, we chatted. I thought he was in DC, but no. The calls were routed through his DC office. He lives in Atlanta, and his wife works for the CDC as an AIDS program administrator. She headed it up in the Caribbean under the Assistant Secretary of State for that area, Haiti, parentheses. And I'll say, you know, Haiti, Caribbean, certain people with jets with nicknames that maybe died in prison, and certain presidents that have islands right next door to that, and AZT and Fauci and all of that stuff. There's nothing good with any of this, but I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds with CDC and AIDS and all of that. He also told me they'd spent a lot of time in Africa, right? And if you don't have any idea where AIDS came from, think the U.S. Army. Think there was a book called The Population Bomb or something, and Nixon's solution was genocide. Just start killing, not Nixon, Kissinger. His solution was just, we'll just start killing people. Yeah. He also told me they had spent a lot of time in Africa. Now he knows his Bible really well, and he'd been trying to tell me that I couldn't know certain things, and he wants me to go through Matthew 24 and 25 with him verse by verse. I haven't yet, because going through Matthew 24 and 25 with him is a waste of time. All right? God is speaking directly to me. I'm not interested in his interpretations of Matthew 24 and 25. You can follow churches and dogma. I follow Jesus Christ. So let's keep going. I realized during this call he's a spook and he's trying to maintain communication because our pattern work together is done. Well, I thought he'd lived in DC. He previously said DC was his home, so I was confused when he said they lived in Atlanta. He explained that they consider DC their home, and they are trying really hard to get his wife a transfer from Atlanta to DC so they can move back home. So understand the meaning. DC is their home. God has used C as C with the eyes several times with me. CDC, CDC, forwards and backwards, CDC. The CDC is headquartered in Atlanta, and the CDC is largely responsible for the pandemic and the death jab. AIDS was the first bioweapon in the depopulation agenda made at Fort Detrick, Maryland Bioweapons Research Facility. AIDS was spread in Asia and Africa by the CDC and the U.S. military as part of the global depopulation agenda. So where is the destruction? Where is the error 404 not found? Atlanta, CDC, DC, United States government, the evil purveyors of the depopulation agenda. And as all of these thoughts rushed through my head, I had to slow down as a car was off the road on the left, divided highway, so towards the center. There were flashers of police cars, ambulances, and tow trucks. The car had to be pulled out of the ditch. The car had been pulled out of the ditch already and had obviously rolled over several times. It was on its wheels, but every surface and the roof were caved in and all of the windows were broken out. It was definitely totaled. So in my mind, as this is unfolding in my mind, God is talking about DC. He's talking about the government getting wrecked. The government is not going to be found. And then he shows me this car wreck, right? Yeah, the government's going to get wrecked, and God's going to do it. It's not going to take a civil war or, anyways, government's going to get wrecked. The windows were all broken out. It was definitely totaled. As I passed the scene, this registered with me as part of the message. The U.S. government and its evil organizations like the CDC are going to get wrecked. And for anyone paying attention, this same area code 404 is Fulton County, the heart of the election rigging and criminal lawfare against patriots, corrupt Fannie Willis is Fulton County's DA. Well, anyone that knows God knows he's hilarious. And I'm going to make another video about this. As I drive along, I notice exit Wewoka/Cromwell Highway 56. Remember that 56? That 56 signified entering into things. So God showed me another message, or a continuation of this message, as I went down the road, uh, that was all about civil war and the destruction of America and breaking up into factions. And so that Cromwell, Wewoka, I don't want to get that deep into it. Um, look up the history of Wewoka. Cromwell, um, Oliver Cromwell, right? There was this big civil war in um, England. It was very brutal, nasty, bloody civil war. And Oliver Cromwell was Parliament's man. Um, he ended up beheading the king. He ended up, fighting with everybody. He ended up becoming a dictator, taking over the country. And then after years and years of civil war with many, many factions, it wasn't just like two groups fighting. There was like all sorts of factions and things going crazy and people changing sides and alliances and total destruction and chaos. It's like one of them things, like if you lived through it, you did good. And then in the end, Cromwell gets beheaded. So anyways, that will be another video. The whole explanation of God, how God revealed this whole message about America, right? So these road numbers are very symbolic, and the names of the cities and the histories of the cities and the names of the cities, right? Like some of those cities were good cities that were clean and virtuous and prospered and grew and are still good places today. And then other of those cities were like pits and dens of depravity, and and they're just like utter ruins, wastelands today. So anyways, so 404 America Not Found. And I told you this was about the 95. So I'm going to bring it back to that. So I told you that 95 was payment with the IR1 thing, law and grace, coming on IR1, coming on the same day this year, 5/9. 95 days later being August 12th, which is the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av. And that being the day that both temples were destroyed. And if you look, historically, there's all sorts of bad stuff came on the Jewish people on the 9th of Av. Okay. That's the day the solar flare hits, Malachi 4 solar flare, when I believe that there will be destruction of, who knows, but also I believe it's the separating of the wheat and the chaff, that spiritually the harvest is happening. In the physical world, it may not happen until people die or are killed or whatever, but spiritually the divide has happened. God has said, you're with me and you're in my book, or you're not. I think that's what's going on. So the 95, the payment, right? I told you that this message is predominantly for the Israelites, not just the nation of Israel, but Israelites globally. They, what we refer to today as Jews, they control everything. And I mean, people can argue about that and debate about that. They control the banks, they control the media, they control the governments. Our congressmen have APAC handlers, right? And this video will probably get banned and censored, and who knows all else. Whatever. If they ban it, I'll remake it. I'll take out some words. Anyways, you would think that their greatest power center in the world is Israel, but it's not. It's New York City and Washington DC. And on the east coast of the United States, from Miami all the way up to past Bar Harbor and Bangor, Maine, Let me see if I can find it. All the way up to Fredericton, the I-95 corridor. Okay, 95, pay attention here. So here's a little snippet that I have for you. History of the Jews in Maine. Jews have been living in Maine, a state in the northeastern United States, for 200 years with significant Jewish communities in Bangor as early as the 1840s and in Portland since the 1880s. Study finds Miami Jewish community is booming. Okay, so literally from one end of I-95 to the other end, and in the center of that, the city with the largest population of Jewish people in the world, New York City, and then you got Boston and Baltimore and Washington DC. The center of Jewish power in the world is that I-95 corridor, and at the heart of it is that Washington DC to New York area. Now, I told you certain things, like with that 5, East 995 road, that message, right? E is 5, Abba. 5995 is a swath, a row of fallen green. 995 is to discern, and 95 is payment. The I-95 corridor, I is 9. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. 9. So it's 995 to discern, okay? Well, the Francis Scott Key Bridge is part of the I-95 corridor. And how God lays this out all in advance, it's beautiful and amazing. And in one respect, in many respects, it's horrifying, because if these people don't come to Jesus pretty quick, they're going to die in their unrighteousness and go to hell. So what I will tell you is, I'll just open it up real quick. So God stuck that 6 in the middle of his message, because the Francis Scott Key Bridge is I-695. It's like a Baltimore loop. So it's part of the I-95 corridor, but it's 695. And this is what I said earlier, abad. Okay, A-B-A-D. Abad is to perish. That's the definition, to perish. And it has an extensive list of words here in biblical citations, like how many times it appears as a different word in the Bible. Annihilate, 2. Annihilated, 1. Being lost, 1. Broken, 1. Corrupts, 1. Destroyed, 33. Destroyed, 15. Destroying, 2. Destroys, 2. Destruction, 2. Dying, 2. Fail, 1. Fails, 1. Give up as lost, 1. Lacking, 1. Lost, 12. Make vanish, 1. Makes to perish, 1. No, 2. Obliterate, 1. Perish, 61 times. Perish, 16 times. Perishes, 7 times. Perishing twice. Ruined, 4. Surely perish, 3. Take, 1. Utterly destroy, 1. Wandering, 1. Waste, 1. Wiped, 1. God's sending a pretty clear message with this I-95, right? So the Bible says that, they went away from God. That's what it says. When the first temple was destroyed, it was destroyed because they went away from God. When the second temple was destroyed, it was because they went away from God. And they were cut off in their unrighteousness. Symbologically, if I'm saying that right, um, that bridge coming down, tanker trucks burning up bridges and closing the I-95, they are cut off. Okay, that's the message that God's giving. They are cut off. Um, and I wanted to look at this real quick in Greek, maybe. So in Greek, 6 is Abel, a son of Adam. Abel, remember this is dual message, right? There's the harvest of the wheat, and there's the burning of the chaff and the weeds. Abel, a son of Adam. Abel was found righteous before God. So the whole East Coast. Oh, I know where I wanted to go with this. Brandon Briggs and probably many other prophets have talked about this. Brandon Briggs is saying that there is going to be a magnitude 10 earthquake on the New Madrid fault on August 24th. And I hope it's okay to reference other people's stuff. That magnitude 10 is literally going to destroy the country, cut it right in half. And before I talk about that, I want to talk about, I firmly believe that God has heard our prayers, that our prayers have gone up to God, and that God's people have humbled themselves. And I believe that 2 Chronicles 7:14 is in effect. God's going to heal our land. It's not going to be the same as it was before. And but I want to describe it like this, right? Our land needs healing because it's like this infected, pus-filled wound. And look at our country. Look around at the filth and the depravity. You know, we put old ladies in prison for praying. You know, a guy reports that there's criminal activity at certain centers where they're selling baby body parts illegally, and instead of putting those people in jail, they put the guy that reported it in jail. People use their First Amendment rights to protest what they see as unwrong, and hundreds of people get locked up without a trial for 3 years. It's open, nasty, infected, pus-filled wound. And before God can heal it, he's got to cleanse it. And I'll say this, if you think about this, as harsh as this may sound, you could take out the major cities, the blue cities, and you would have cleaned out 90% of the filth in this country. Of the corruption, just all the different evils. I'm not going to get into all of that. If you have any sense, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And what I will say is that those cities predominantly are in 3 places. Like 90% of those cities are on the East Coast, the West Coast, and up and down the Mississippi River. You know, like in the one direction, you know, going up to Chicago. Now, Brandon Briggs and probably many people before him are going all the way back to Edgar Casey and the U.S. Navy map. If you know what I'm referring to, look up the U.S. Navy map. It was actually on an issue of Forbes magazine 10 or 15 years ago. A magnitude 10 earthquake on the New Madrid fault will literally rip this country in half. The cities will be in flames with gas mains busted. He's saying this happens August 24th. Or he's not you know, swearing by it, but he says he has that sense from God. Now, I'll tell you that earthquakes get set off by solar flares, and I'm telling you there's solar flare coming August 12th, a big one. Um, and, you know, I'll just recap that God was giving me messages before I even knew he was giving me messages. And I went back looking in some stuff and I found a license plate from 2007, and that license plate was 0824MX, right? So August of 24, MX. M is 13, so 13X. An X13 or 13X solar flare. That's what's coming on the 12th. But that solar flare, again, is apparently going to be preceded by all sorts of other solar flares and CMEs, which are going to be knocking our magnetosphere down, knocking our shield down. So the impact of that, what happens on the 12th, is very likely to be even worse than it would be just on its own. And solar flares cause earthquakes. I would refer you to Ben Davidson and Suspicious Observers, and you can catch him on YouTube or on his Suspicious Observers website. And Ben covers all space weather. He covers what's happening with the sun all the time, and he'll tell you all the scientific facts about how solar flares cause earthquakes. So Brandon Briggs is also saying there's going to be a big earthquake in California, right? So big earthquakes in California, all sorts of faults out there, Cascadia fault, San Andreas fault, all sorts of faults. You know, will California fall in the ocean? You know, I don't know. But I do know that offshore earthquakes, onshore earthquakes can do a lot of damage, and they could be accompanied by offshore earthquakes that cause massive tsunamis, right? So the whole West Coast could get wiped out, and probably will. And then the New Madrid fault going will wipe out all those cities down the center of the country. What he's talking about on the West Coast, that'll probably wipe out those cities. But for some reason, none of these people have talked about the East Coast. But I will tell you that there's this guy, Perry Stone. And Perry Stone, I've caught a few of his videos over the years. And Perry Stone keeps having visions of tidal waves or tsunamis. Okay? And when he has these visions, these dreams, he's in different places, right? Like maybe where this is happening covers a really large area. So remember why this is happening is Ezekiel 21:15. And let me bring that up. I brought that up earlier, just so I'd have it. I have set the point of the sword against all their gates, that their heart may faint, and their ruins be multiplied. Ah, it is made bright, it is wrapped up for the slaughter. And I don't think I covered this in the other video, and I need to cover this. Wrapped up for the slaughter, right? And I told you there was 19s all over this thing. And I didn't get into all those 19s and the numbers. Like 3187 adds up to 19. The BF 9505, right? The 9505 adds the 9505. 5 and 5 make 10, 9 is 19. And it's in there in a lot of other places. But just a few days back, my buddy who we're baptizing our kids together on Sunday, and the previous video talks about that. Get your kids baptized. Get your kids baptized before August 12th if they're not baptized. Get them baptized. They had their baby 19 days before August 12th. 19 days. So the birth pains are over, right? And you can say, oh, you know, that's coincidence. There's no coincidences with God. And another thing that happened 19 days before August 12th is Benjamin Netanyahu came and spoke to Congress. And what did they do? They gave him 53 standing ovations and said, hey, let's go blow up the world together. Yep, that's our That's our APAC funded Congress. Okay, so why has God pointed the sword at them? And when I say pointed the sword at them and he's got the sword pointed at all their gates, their strongest gate is Washington, DC, New York City. That's their greatest power center in the world. More powerful than Tel Aviv. So God tells us in 21:24 why he's doing this. And the reason I'm reading this is I got to get to the last sentence too, because to go on with what I'm telling you. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, because you have made your iniquity to be remembered, and they certainly have, in that your transgressions are discovered, so that in all your doings your sins do appear. When God says all, he means all. In all, so that in all your doings your sins do appear. Because I say that ye are come to remembrance, ye shall be taken with the hand. Taken with the hand. Okay? I don't know that what I'm going to tell you is going to happen, but I don't believe in coincidences. We got that whole East Coast I-95 corridor. The predictions, the prophecies that have been given by Brandon Briggs and many others over the years. California, New Madrid, that gets rid of 2/3 of the filth, two-thirds of the infection that has to be cleansed before God can heal our land. The 1/3 that nobody's mentioned is that East Coast. And maybe that's because I'm supposed to mention it to you. La Palma. La Palma Island is a island in the Canary Islands that they've said for a long time that the western flank of that island, it's a volcanic island, basalt, I think, volcanic island, that the western flank of it is going to go. At some point, the whole western side of the island is going to go right into the sea, right into the ocean. And what they used to say is that that is going to cause such a great tsunami that it's going to wipe out the entire East Coast. Now, of recent, they've done more studies and they've tried to poo-paw that. But, you know, there's this world of politically correct. La Palma, when you translate that to English, means the palm. I hate how this camera flips everything around 180. It means the palm, and it means to clap, right? So it's referencing the hand. When you translate it to English, it's referencing the hand, and we're talking about an English-speaking place. Taken by the hand. Okay, so, and that means to kill. You know, that's the same as taking with the sword. You're getting it taken out. La Palma is the palm tree. When Solomon built the temple, and they put up all the metal and gold, inlaid gold everywhere, what it says, I doubt I have this open anymore. Gotta find it. Solomon builds temple, King James Version. Temple built in 7 years. He carved angels, palm trees, and flowers into the wall all around the inner and outer rooms of the temple. So palm trees directly reference the temple. Now, remember what I told you that Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, is a day of mourning. It's the day not one, but both temples were destroyed on that day. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that this event is going to happen on the 9th of Av, but it potentially could. And solar flares cause earthquakes. So, what we know, right? I don't know that this is going to happen, but there's no coincidences with God, and that island is ready to collapse, making a giant 200-foot tsunami onto the East Coast. And we know the times, the seasons. We know where we're at. We don't know any exact dates or the hour or anything, but we know where we're at, and we know that in these times the Earth's going to be moved. There's going to be earthquakes in diverse places. The mountains are going to move out of their places. Well, that island is essentially a mountain out of the sea floor, right? And the top of it is this volcanic cone island. It's a mountain. It's going to move out of its place. Why? Because God said it's going to move out of its place, because the mountains, didn't say some of the mountains, he said the mountains are going to move out of their places. So we can expect La Palma to go. And all their predictions and all their modeling probably can't compare to what God has planned. And in looking at this a little bit and reading their latest studies and all this stuff, I noticed that the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, is not full of faults like the Pacific Ocean, like the Ring of Fire. But there is a big major fault down in the Caribbean, and this is pure speculation on my part, but I kind of have a sense of how God can unfold things. There's a big fault up by Newfoundland, so up to the north, and there's a big fault down in the Caribbean, okay? So literally there's a big fault at the bottom end of I-95, and there's a big fault at the north end of I-95. Just envision this scenario, right? La Palma goes, and goes in a bigger way than they could ever imagine, because it's not just the flank, the western flank falling, but the whole mountain moving. And a giant tsunami is headed at the East Coast. And at the same time that giant tsunami is headed at the East Coast and is moving in, these two faults go off to the north and to the south, and just kind of come in from the north and the south, wrapping into and reinforcing that tsunami. Gone. Cleansing of the country complete. Total and utter destruction, but hey, we're God's people. We'll rebuild. And we won't allow the filth and the perversion, and we won't allow Antichrist in our country anymore. And there was something else I wanted to say about that, about the whole I-95 thing and La Palma and earthquakes, volcanoes. That's why you ought to have a script. At least ought to have notes so you can keep track of what the heck you're doing with these videos. And anyone watching them, I appreciate you bearing with me. Anyways, I kind of think that's going to happen. There's no coincidences with God. There's this island out there that's this ticking time bomb named the Hand. The Hand. And they're going to be taken by the hand. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. There is great potential, like when tsunamis happen, they can reflect back and forth, right? Like, so a tsunami can go from La Palma and hit the East Coast and reflect back and come all the way back towards the other side of the ocean. And if it comes back towards the other side of the ocean, it's going to come into the Mediterranean, and it's going to stack up in the Mediterranean, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, traveling to the east end of the Mediterranean, right to the center of it. It's going to get funneled right to the center. And guess what's right there? Israel. Israel. It's going to take them by the hand. It's time for payment for those that have rejected Jesus Christ, those that are under the law. And those that are under the law that don't even understand they're under the law because they just reject everything and they're atheists and they don't believe. So anyways, I'll leave it there. I don't think it's all a coincidence. I told you that 95 is payment. 995 is discernment. It's the I95 corridor. I is 9, 995. 6 is perish. It's destroy, destruction. You know, it's literally signaling cut off. I explained to you about the 404 thing and how that, you know, leads to C, DC, and DC is like the heart of darkness, man. And if you don't know that, you really don't know anything. Anyways, God bless you. Good night. I'll get this posted and I'm going to bed.